Well, hello, my name is Ted Gardner, and I'm an interviewer for the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County, and today I'm interviewing Martin Medow on the 27th of March 2007 at the main library, and our camera operator today is Dennis Daly, and also present is Miriam, right? Miriam Medow.
She goes with me everywhere.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
Have you known each other for a while?
67 years.
Wow, 67 years. Isn't that wonderful? Oh my golly. Well, Martin, where were you born?
Chicago, Illinois.
Oh, brother.
On the old, what would have been called West Side, but really was the east side of Chicago, around Troop and 12th Street.
I'll be darned. Right in the city.
Right in the city.
How
My father had a jewelry store.
Isn't that something?
And we lived in the back of it.
Well, isn't that something? So did you sort of grow up, you knew about the business with your dad? And
No, not much.
not much?
I wasn't much of a businessman.
I understand.
I guess maybe when I was about maybe 5, 7, something like that, we moved further into Chicago.
Oh, you did?
And we moved about 3 or 4 places in Chicago until we finally, I went to a school called William Penn Elementary School on 16th and Harding, something like that.
Yeah.
And then I went to the school on the south side, Bill's School, which would be something like an intermediate school. And then I went to Crane Tech High School.
Queen Tech. And was that was right in the city?
Yeah, oh yeah, everything is right.
Everything was right in the
Lots
city.
of people around you all over.
Oh, I should say, what a great city though. I love Chicago.
I didn't really think much of it and did for a long time, but after I left and traveled around, I got to appreciate it.
Absolutely. Very, very wonderful place to go back to.
It's got such a variety of ethnic and...
Well, you and I both, I don't know how old you are when you were born, but you must...
1913.
1913? Good heavens. My goodness sakes. That's wonderful.
She takes good care of me.
I should say so. Are you ever lucky? So you're 94.
Almost. In December, I'll be 94.
Isn't that wonderful? Oh, well, I'm just a kid. I just had my 86th. But that's so interesting because I love the history, and you must remember very well what Chicago was like in the Depression and into the 30s and all the notoriety that was attached to Chicago in those
I
days.
can tell you 2.
Good.
I don't recall what year it would be. Maybe I might have been 16 or 18. An uncle of mine had some illness and he went to Rochester, New York. And as he was going up to the hotel, in the elevator of the hotel, and the baggage boy was with him. And they got to talking. He said he was from Chicago. And so this baggage boy turned and said, "Do you mind showing me your gun, Mr. Medow?"
Yes, that was very common, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I should say, well, did you recall those tough times when the gang and the mobs were ruling Chicago?
Well, even when I was a kid, my father had this jewelry store. I don't recall what the conversation was that we got to talking. I think I found he had a gun. And he had a huge dog. And I just asked him why and what. And he said, well, sometimes some of the guys around here get a little rough and they come in here and they want to give me trouble. He said, but I have an arrangement with the fellow who runs the saloon on the corner. He said, I pay him so much a week or a month and he keeps these guys off our back.
Oh, isn't
Pay
that?
off even way
How
back
hard?
then.
Isn't that something? Well, that was something. So you, your dad had to
Smooth
smooth away and little stuff under the counter.
everybody shared in the goods.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting because people say, "Oh, what a terrible thing." Well, yeah, the circumstances were bad, but you know, what a spirit it built of neighborhood and friendship and so forth. People were looking out for each other.
Of course, it had a price.
Oh yes, oh yeah.
And people did. There was a little park there. I don't recall what the name of the park. I don't recall the park. But we were young, and our mothers would take us over there, you know, to play in the playground, in the water, and the sand. And but there used to be neighborhood associations. I recall the word they used. It was arbitrary circles there, working men's circles.
Mm-hmm.
And it was people who came from a given country. They would be called landsmen, you know, people who came from the same place.
Sure.
And this was one reason for people to have to be associated.
Right.
And they were, I don't recall much of what and why and how, but this is, I remember people did coalesce in around that.
Well, that was, I think, of course, that was very typical in the early 20th century, immigrants coming to this country and moving west into the cities, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati and Chicago and farther on. But they gathered together to help each other and so forth.
Well, not only that, but you know, people need other people to be with. They want to talk to somebody.
Absolutely.
And
Speak their
a
language.
cup of tea or so.
Sure.
And this was the basis.
Right. Well, now tell me about Queen Tech. What kind of that sounds like a
Queen
technical
Tech?
school.
That was a technical high school where not behind it, but the structure was built on the ability to operate different kinds of machinery to do whatever it took to build a machine or build a house.
Oh yeah.
So we had a machine shop, and we made our own screws. We could take it out of a piece of metal, shape it down, and put it on a threading. I don't recall what the name of the machine is, but when you can set it in, it will cut a thread. And you had to know something about the minor diameter and all that sort of thing of the thread, how many threads per inch and the like, so you could set the machines and the machine would run due.
Well,
also, we did things. I made a tool. I made in another shop forgot what you call it. It comes like this and handle. You put in your blade, and here you can take the blade in and out. And we were given a piece of steel in a drawing, and this is what it was. We did mechanical drawing, etc. And out of that, I bent this piece of metal like that, shaped it down, made two little, I don't know what you call it now, but this is what you held, the screw that came in from both ends. And you had a handle on one screw.
Sort of like a vise?
Not a vise, but when you put your blade in, on the end of the screw, you could tighten it to place.
That would secure.
We had to make our own handle.
Sure.
And
well, you must have had a natural bent for mechanics and.
I guess a little bit.
Yeah.
We made our own motors. We had a wind around. We built an armature and did the winding and da-da-da-da. When I got all done, it was a long time to do it. Damn thing wouldn't work. So I went up to the teacher and I said, where do we start, to find out what's wrong? He said, let me have that. There were two end bells, that held it on an axis. Give me your screwdriver. He tightened it up. And he plugged it in.
Worked like a charm.
All that was wrong was I didn't tighten the end bells so that the axle there was caught. And it was frozen against the whatever was in. And when he straightened it out, it worked perfectly.
How about that?
And so it was that kind of experience. We did things in electricity, the light.
Right, right. Well, was that a 4-year school?
Yeah.
That was 4 years, and you got your diploma at the end of that. And then what did you, now let's see, so you were what, 18 when you graduated from there?
Probably.
So talking 32, 31, 32, right in the early depths of the Depression. You remember, of course, the National Recovery Act and the
Let me tell
WPA.
you about the Depression.
Yeah.
We lived in a large apartment building at that time. I don't know, West Side, Harding, and 14.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 3 banks of 3 stories, so there were 9 families there. And one morning, we heard a hell of a rattle and a ruckus going on and shouting and all that. And so people gathered from all apartments, where, who, what. And we focused down on one of the apartments on the first floor, ran down there. And there were a father and son slugging it out. What the hell is the problem? Well, he won't go out and get a job. There weren't any jobs.
No.
And the family was destitute.
Yeah.
And that was a depression.
Those were really, really tough times, and particularly in a large city. You know, I grew up in a small, very small country town, and we hardly knew about it. You know, and we
Where
weren't.
did your money come from, your income?
Well, my dad was a merchant. My dad was a lumber merchant. This was way out in the far northwest, and so it was a situation where the town in which I was born and got my early
Can I ask what's the name?
Hillsboro, Oregon, just outside of Portland, west of Portland, toward the ocean,
We were there.
about 25 miles. It's a big city now, but in those days it was a very small town, but it was a county seat, so it was an important town. So anyway, we can talk about that a little bit later, but you're the focus here, and you're the guy. You're the guy on the hot spot, so we got to make sure that we get your story. So what happened after Queen Tech?
I was going to go to college, but there really wasn't any money. But I have a cousin. My father had a cousin who came over here from Europe about almost the same time as him, and he got into the pharmacy business, and he did very well.
Right.
So the question was, how much money does I need, and what could I do to support myself?
Sure.
So he gave my father enough money to pay for 1 year of college, and I went to. We had a community college. Crane, what was Crane Tech, had an auxiliary building. Next to it was Crane Junior College.
Oh, yes.
So I went to Crane Junior College for 1 year. And after that, the YMCA had a community college in downtown. And I went to that for 1 year. They gave my father money for me to go there. And I don't remember much about that YMCA college, except that we had a course called the Hygiene of Marriage, or Marriage Hygiene. And it, to acquaint us with the facts of life,
Right.
how babies were made, how you kept yourself healthy and all that.
Sure.
And I had a textbook for the course, and it was laying on the dining room table where everything, all our books and all our transactions took place. My father picked it up one day and he looked at it and he said, "What kind of book is this?" I said, "Oh, it's my book for my course." And he said, "Well, there's a man and a woman in here who are the authors, and they have just different names. They're not married. How can a man and a woman tell you about marriage and they're not married?" Indicating a great wisdom in my father.
Absolutely.
Marriage isn't only sex. Marriage is how people get along.
Right.
And
Exactly. Yeah.
live.
Yes. And that comes, also it comes from an old country background too, you know. Where in Europe did your family come from?
My father came from a little town outside of Kiev in the Ukraine.
Right.
Jews were not allowed to come into Ukraine, into the cities at that time. And so he was apprenticed to a jeweler. And he would go in when gates were open,
Right.
do his bit, and
Just
go
imagine.
home at the end. One of the interesting things he told me, he always made little tools to do his work because he was a
Right.
manufacturing jeweler. He made rings.
Sure. Very intricate.
He said, I said, "How'd you do your drills?" He said, "Well, we cut a branch off the tree, then we go out and find a horse and pull the hair out of his tail. And use that, and then wrap it around whatever we want to turn, and then that's how we
How about that?
did that."
Talk about
And then,
innovative.
so it came from there. My mother's family lived around the Black Sea in Odessa,
Oh, yes.
and her father was a wheat broker,
Huh.
grain broker, who
Great.
it was.
Right.
And,
So you're first generation U.S., huh?
yes.
Isn't that's wonderful. Boy, what a wonderful background. Well, Martin, so here you are, and you had a great cousin who was willing to help you in your education.
Well, after I got done with that, with Crane, next thing was, what am I going to do then? And so I went to the University of Chicago.
Oh.
I got me a job there. I waited on the tables in the coffee shop, and they helped with what money I might need for tuition. And I graduated. The family looked forward to me being a lawyer.
All right.
I took courses in history. My degree is in political science.
Political science.
With a major in history.
So you had a Bachelor of Arts degree?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
But what I wanted to do when I got out of school was to travel.
Right.
My brother was going to school at Northwestern at the time, and he had a part-time job downtown working for the sales manager of a company that makes drawn wire formings, like safety pins.
Mm-hmm.
They were located in New York City, and all their business was around New York City with the cutting up trades and things like that. And the sales manager was in Chicago. What they wanted to do was infiltrate in between and build out a little bit. And they were talking about hiring a traveling salesman. My brother told me that. I said, talk to Max and see if I will work for him. And he got along well with Max and arranged for me to have a meeting with Max. And I had a job as a traveling salesman.
Oh, boy.
And I traveled through Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, Western Pennsylvania, some in Western New York. And
that was a real broadening experience too, wasn't
it
it?
was.
Certainly.
Also, it was part of an expression that we have in Jewish, it's called b'shirt.
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 Meaning manifest destiny.
Oh, yeah.
Or
What you were
meant to be.
meant to be, what you were intended for.
And it's through that I met this lady.
Aha.
Because after I had been on traveling a year or so, And I'd come home, my mother and father had friends, and they'd come over, and one of the men asked me what I was doing, and I told him. He said, "Do you ever get to Cincinnati?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "You get to Cincinnati," I said, "I want you to call up my cousin. They live there, and they'll see that you feel comfortable."
Welcome.
Well, nothing ever happened that summer. But the following summer, my brother was had time off in class, and they said, "Why don't you travel with me? I'm going to go along the Ohio River. I'll go out to Virginia. Anytime you want to go back home, put you on a train."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we traveled, and we came to Cincinnati, and called his family, and they invited us over. They were very nice. And he said, "You know, you're going to be here a week, so you need to have some girlfriends." And so she got some girls for us. I don't remember mine, but my brother apparently engaged in conversation with his, and she asked him where we were going, and he told her we're going to continue. She said, "Going to hunting?" "Yeah." She said, "Let me give you a list of 4 ladies that you can call when you get to Huntington."
For heaven's sake, he really had connections, didn't he?
Well, that's part of being Jewish.
That's wonderful.
So we didn't do that. We just kept going. I don't know why, but we kept going. And later that year, or the next year, I don't recall, I was home for Passover.
Uh-huh.
And my mother said to me, "Martin, when are you going to get married?" "Mom, I don't have a girl." It's an old story. "Mom, I don't have a girl." "Get a girl." My brother was at the table, and he said, "Did you ever call those gals, from Huntington?" I said, "No, no." But thought struck me, and I went back to the closet to get my summer suit, because I looked in here, and sure enough, we went through the dry cleaner, and there were 4 names on there. So I came back to the table. I said, "I'm going to call these people, girls, whatever, and I'm going to leave for Chicago, for Huntington." And that was on the weekend. On Monday morning, I left, got to Huntington. I did my business, hung around the area, so that Friday around dinner time, I called her,
Mm-hmm.
and a very firm voice wanted to know who I was and why I was. But anyhow, I got to talk to her, and no, she was busy that night and Saturday night. I said, "Well," she said, "but I work downtown. I'm out for lunch. Let's have lunch tomorrow." So I walked in, and she worked at a baby shop, and I walked in. There was this particular figure up against the counter. I said, "I'm looking for Miriam." She said, "Are you Martin?" I said, "Yeah." Well, we went out to lunch at Walgreens. Big spender, 50 cents a piece.
Right.
10 cents per tip,
You're all hard.
And that was it. After that, I came back for every weekend.
Right.
And then we finally decided that we were pretty much interested in the same thing and the same kind of people.
That's a great story. So here you were, Illinois and West Virginia. How about that? That's a nice combination. Well then, and how lucky you were to have your dad's cousin help you with your education costs.
Yeah.
And then, so how, was that it? You stayed as a salesman for many years?
Let's see, that was started in what?
32, 34?
No, that started in 37. I graduated in 36.
Mm-hmm.
And we got married in 40.
In 40.
My mother, I have to tell you this, there's some ethnic differences between us. Her family is Germanic and mine is Russian. And her grandmother asked me what I was going to do. You know, what did I want to do in my life? And I told her I wanted to be a farmer. I think that gentle lady almost dropped her teeth. But anyhow, generally in families, and our family, we don't have that much money, but when there is a recognized need, somehow enough money is found to do it. In this case, it was, Dave gave me money for my car. I needed money to buy a car.
Sure. And you worked and you paid him back and, you know, and all this
We
sort of...
paid him back.
Well, that's great. So now here you're married in 1940, and war clouds had already been forming in Europe by this time, and Hitler had marched into Poland and so forth and so on, and was about to confront the Russians in that ill-conceived campaign. What did you foresee by 1940? You see, you were in your 20s. You were 25, 26 years old.
Well, the 13 and the 20s.
Yeah, 27.
I expected to go in.
Oh, you did?
And we're looking forward to changing my way of making a living. Just can't live on the road.
Right.
Which we did for a while. She traveled with me. But we thought we would open a retail store, and we tried to figure out what was needed and what kind of business. And one place, we were up around Sandusky, and we thought there would be a wonderful place to open up a baby shop. And I found out the fellow who owned the property where we intended to open the store was right next to Susan Roebuck. He lived in Cleveland, so we went up and met with him and invited us, told him I wanted to, and to make it a short story. He said, "You don't have the money to go into a retail business. Just look at it. This is what you need, and you don't know the territory or how you would advertise and all that." Well, by that time, things were getting pretty tough. The company I worked for needed to get supplies of brass and steel to make these pins and things.
Right.
And so, they were nice. They took me into the plant up in Connecticut. Gave me a paper job, you know. Really what I did was distribute our production. All our people would call us, and I need this, I need that.
Right.
We'd take a look and see what it was that everybody needed and what we had, and we gave them a part of what we had.
Sure.
And then eventually, and it was a very nice life. We enjoyed it.
Well, I should say, well, that is, and it was such a forming, not only forming of your life, but it was a strengthening of your life with Miriam too, wasn't it? Working together, and that's just great. Now along came December the 7th, 1941. Where were you then?
In Danielson, Connecticut.
You were back in Cincinnati by that time?
No, Connecticut. And I'd already been working. The war was, things were looking bad, let me put it that way.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel that I wanted to be working here. I thought I could get a better job at Hamilton Standard Propeller, which was in Hartford, a little way up the road. So one day I just took off and went up there, got a job as a some kind of paper clip.
Mm-hmm.
And next day when I came back to the plant, the president called me in. He said, "Martin, what were you doing at Hamilton Standard yesterday?" Guess I got red. I said, I was looking for a job and I got one.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Well," he said, "you got a job here. You don't have to be afraid. And I think I ought to be doing it."
Mm-hmm.
And so I became a builder of propellers.
Oh, you did?
I built propellers for Hamilton Standard
Wow.
propeller. And I
That
took
was,
two people to build them. And I had a woman assigned to me, a husky gal, because we had to use about an 8 or 10 pound mallet to bring up the two halves of the belt, and the propeller stuck out from each side. And this gal could beat it up better. But anyhow, my number came up, and my mother came up to help close the house,
right.
and I went off to Fort Devens.
Fort where?
Fort Devens.
Oh, Fort Devens,
That
Massachusetts.
place.
Right. 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 Well, now, this is interesting to me particularly because of your age. You were an older man, you know, and you were dealing with 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds as well as up in the 20s. Because I can remember when I went in 42, right after Pearl Harbor, I was 21, and I was sort of regarded as sort of a middle-aged guy, you know. And in the service, you know, in those days, anybody 25 and over was called an old man. If you were 30 years of age, you were really old. That was my experience with men.
I held up pretty good against them.
I'm sure you did.
First thing they did, well,
You had the experience already. You had life experience.
I was a Boy Scout.
Yeah, so was I.
I had some bad feelings about the military.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you should be willing to take care of each other. First thing I heard when I was walking down, I went out to Indian Town Gap, because where I started my basic training. Guys look at coming in civilian clothes. "You'll be sorry,"
Oh, yeah.
and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
What the hell is that?
Mm-hmm.
And there were always these kind of things. So, hey, Medow, you take care of yourself.
Absolutely. Well, I can remember that too, you know. Head for the hills, it'll never catch you there. Things like that, you know. But I think hopefully they were mainly joking, but
I think they
I
had
think
to
they
be.
were.
And there were a couple of other things. When they were shifting us around under Patton, and we were being trucked from here and there, the chant we had was, "Patton's guts and our blood."
Oh, boy.
They called them old blood guts. You know?
Old blood and guts, yeah,
Oh,
that's
when all
right.
these trucks would be going down. Patton's guts and our blood makes me think of our president.
So there you got your training, your basic training at Indian Town Gap, and then were you shipped overseas?
Yep.
You embarked from New York, did you, or Newark?
Beats the hell out of me where it came out, and I don't know where I really came in.
Mm-hmm.
Someplace in England,
Right.
and
Went across on a big transport?
yes, and
Did you have any feeling of fear going out on the ocean?
no, I'm a sailor.
You're a sailor.
Yeah,
Good for you.
I used to race a little sailing boat,
Right.
and always like that.
Well, a number of men that we've interviewed here were farm boys, you know, from Kentucky and West Virginia and Ohio, and they'd never even seen the ocean, let alone beyond it. And a couple of them said, "Boy, being on that big ship was kind of a fearful thing with lots of troops aboard. But do you remember going across the ocean? Were you escorted or did you sail alone?
I think we went alone.
Yeah.
I don't recall.
Yeah.
But, and I don't recall where we landed in England. We had some camp that we practiced.
Sure, you did
as
some
well.
more training there.
And
So now this would be what, 1943?
it had to be, no, it had to be, I went in 1944.
Oh, I see, okay.
Around, had to be around.
Yeah, 1944.
August or September of 44.
Okay, so this was after the landings at Normandy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
And where did you catch up with the army at that time? In France, of course.
We landed at Omaha Beach.
Okay.
That was a miserable thing.
Yeah.
We had to get into a landing craft, and they had a chute that you jumped in and slid into the boat, and you had to time it so that when the tide brought it up,
Oh, boy.
you were going down.
Sure.
And you didn't bang into each other.
Right.
You then slid in
Right.
when the tide let it down. And then they threw your duffel bag after that. And I don't recall wading through the water, but coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And then we made camp someplace on Omaha Beach, I don't know. One thing that struck me was, this was a military area, and I saw a woman dressed in fine clothes, beautiful tweeds, highly fashioned, and she was knitting and walking down the road. And I thought that was unusual, or that we would let her.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, I took it on myself to ask her, what was she doing here? And she said, her kids, she had 2 kids, or a kid, and her grandparents lived around here. And she came down to see her kids.
Mm-hmm.
But she was walking through this military camp.
Wow.
And further I asked her, what do you do for a living or so? Said she had a shop in Paris, stylish shop.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the end of that. And we were there, I don't recall, probably until maybe February or so. And
45.
yeah, that would be 45.
Mm-hmm.
And we always would, I always felt it would be nice to see what's going on, so we always managed to wait for a while.
Right.
And come in.
Well, I know things were difficult over there at that time on land. I've always admired the land warriors and soldiers because you were up against the enemy so personally. The feeling that you had now, here you are in France. Was this in the 3rd Army then, under Patton?
I don't recall. I was in the 95th Division.
95th Division.
I don't recall.
Did that have a particular personnel? Did it come mainly from a certain part of the country, or?
95th, I think, came from about the Midwest. They trained in Texas for a while.
Okay.
And
This is infantry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There were a lot of guys in my group were from Illinois. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
from Indiana.
Right. Do you remember what the symbol for the 95th
I
was?
think there was a V with a 9 in there or something like that.
Okay. All right.
Big.
Yeah. Well, things like that are always interesting to me. I've always been interested in uniforms and insignia and things like
There's
that.
one thing about uniforms, and that has to do with fighting. An army is identified by a uniform and it fights under a flag.
Right.
And if you are fighting and you are not under a flag, I'm going to kill everybody that I pass by. You're a terrorist.
That's right.
I don't know who you are. I don't know how these guys fought in Vietnam.
I don't either. Oh, terrible.
If you don't know who you're fighting,
Right.
because to me, war is kill or be killed.
I know.
And all you have to do is go through the drill and bayonet fighting
Yeah.
and taking a gas exposure.
Well, you know,
Then you know that's the name of the game.
sure, and I've always felt very similar, and as desperate as it sounds, war, the only way to end war is to win the battle. If you won the battle, then it stops. And it doesn't until then, and like what we're faced with in the Middle East today, where it's an entirely different kind of warfare, and you don't know your enemy, you can't trust anybody.
That's right.
And it is a difficult thing. Well, now let's get back to France. So you were moving through. Now you said Metz to me, and of course that's over in eastern France, near the German border. You were working your way sort of diagonally across.
I don't know that we were working our way. They just picked us up on trucks and
They
shot us over.
okay. So you didn't have to march, huh?
Not really. We had to do some, I recall one night we came into some place, I don't know the name, where it was. It was near a river. And they said, there's some boats over here. You're going to take a boat and you're going to cross over to the other side. Didn't know what the hell was on the other side. So where the other side was, it was dark. And I don't recall how we even gathered. These were maybe from here to my wife. We call them some kind of boat where you're just paddling along. And then maybe 4 or 5 guys picked one up, put it in the water, and went on the other side.
Right.
I don't recall what we got into or what it was. I think somebody found a schoolhouse, and we went into the schoolhouse, and we sat around there.
Did you encounter the enemy there?
Not yet.
Not yet.
And then I don't know, we moved out. We were vague. We moved out the next day or something, and we were on a hill. And then we started to get powdered. Somebody was bringing shells in on us. And subsequently we learned that it was our own artillery.
Oh, for heaven's
I
sake.
don't know if they were covering us from somebody or intended to cover us or whatever, but they did. But anyhow, that stopped after a while. And then we saw some, I don't know, shortly after that, some guys out in the field over there were walking towards us with their hands up. Who the hell they were? We asked our officer, shall we shoot him? Shoot at him. He said, yes. Don't let him come in. Well, I don't know. I just know I shot up there. How can you shoot a guy walking at you? Yeah, but I don't know that anybody shot at him. But anyhow, they kept walking, and they came in. When they were close, somebody said, shall we let them in? Okay, let them in. I don't know, let them in where. We were just in a little pile around the area. So,
You took him prisoner, did you?
well, the officer called for an interpreter. And we were always supposed to have interpreters, but nobody came up. I speak Yiddish, and I always like to collect mementos. So I thought, here's my opportunity. So I left my rifle with my stuff, put my bayonet in my mouth, and crawled up there. And I asked the officer, what did he want to know? And he told me. So I just took my bayonet, pointed to one guy, and I said, in Yiddish, I translated it. And this guy looked me straight in the eye. He said, I'm sorry, I don't understand, in perfect English. I don't understand your German. Would you please speak English to me?
My word.
So I turned to the officer and said, he's yours. That really stopped me.
I should say, most unexpected, I should say. Well, so you were being transported in troop carriers, were you, trucks and
Just
stuff?
trucks.
Yeah.
And that's when we were doing this chant of "Oh, blood and guts,
Right.
his guts and our blood."
Did you ever see Patton? Never.
I think maybe, I might have seen that he had a big truck that was his house, it was on wheels.
Right.
I think I may have seen that, but I don't have any
Right,
point of that.
Well, of course, we who didn't have any contact with him, you saw the movie, I would assume, years ago, Patton, that was played by a very famous, I've forgotten the actor's name, who played the role?
George C. Scott. George C. Scott.
Oh, George C. Scott, that's right.
I think so.
It came out about 30 years, 25 years ago. Yeah, it was a great movie. And supposedly he portrayed Patton to a T, you know, with the attitude and the bravura and so forth and so on. Well, so here you are headed toward Metz. You got to Metz?
No,
No.
I was a scout.
Okay.
My assignment was a scout.
You were out ahead.
Yeah, I was a point man for
Point man. Picket man. Yeah.
Well, I figured, you know, if anybody wants to get us, they're not going to shoot one man. They're going to wait until they got a couple of guys. So I'm as safe as I am any place in this game.
Good thinking.
Funny thing along the way, I don't know if we were engaged or what, but I was down near a creek. There were some guys backing me on a ride. Oh, back in someplace, I don't recall the States or in England, we were doing some problems. And I guess our leader gave each one of us an opportunity to solve this problem. And one guy was our scout. And I guess when I did it, I was a better scout. So they made me the scout there. And this guy said to me, "I'll get you for that, Medow." We're coming up to this place where we were in this, I was in a little stream down here, and he was behind me and he said, "Hey, Medow," he says, "I'm going to throw my canteen down to you." He said, "If you fill it with water," I said, "I'll piss in it." And I threw it back, and nothing ever happened, but I kept track of where he was. Later on, I want to go back, you know, talk about the Army.
Yeah.
Sure, when I was at Indiantown Gap, first thing they did was get us out in March. And we didn't march very long when they stopped us. And the guy who was leading us, he said, "You're a sergeant now." He said, "You tell these guys how to march." And it occurred to me, I was the only guy there that knew his left foot from his right foot.
Isn't that amazing?
These guys were walking all over themselves.
Yeah.
So you could realize the kind of problem we had as an Army. And then to finish with this guy, we had captured some prisoners, whatever, we have prisoners, and we needed to get them across a river. All of the ground we were at was flooded, wet, very wet. They had dynamited a dam or something, and there was water all over the place. And we were to take these guys across the river to our command post. And this guy was in front of me, and he had 12 people. He got them in their boat, and the river was running very fast, and they had some yaho who was driving a motor on these boats. They were outboard motors type of thing. And apparently he had no idea how to handle that water, because with the weight he had in the boat and the speed of that water coming down, you just can't turn and go that way. which is what he did. He just got the motor started, ran a little bit, and he turned in, and the boat went over. And I could hear this guy who threatened me, "Oh Lord, if you ever help me now." He's gone.
Oh, my.
And my turn kind of came. I told the guy who was driving the boat to head straight down. And I'll tell him when to turn. I want you to get up as fast as you can go. Keep going straight down. And when I found that we were beating the current, I said, okay, start easing her around. And we were able to turn around and come up
Work
on
your way
the other
over,
side.
sure.
And I don't know, it looked like our command post was a hotel. We turned them over, and
Did you see a lot of destruction?
no, I don't know, my experience must have been different from what the world was. I didn't see this. I remember being in a French farmhouse, and I don't know, the building was big, and different guys had different areas, you know. What are you doing here? They had a couple of chickens in the corner, and they had a mattress to keep them in there, or a couple of pigs over in another place. And then I remember a French woman out in the courtyard wearing a big apron, and she had a handful of money. The guys were buying these different things from her and keeping them in here.
Sure. Living off the land, so to speak.
Yeah. That's combat. You don't know where you're at,
Right.
who's got what, or what you want.
Yeah, it must have been very mystifying and difficult at times like that. Can you think of any other funny instances that you might have had that?
Funny things?
Yeah.
Well, the funniest thing was my being an interpreter. And the guy said he couldn't understand my German. But we were near areas, and I always liked to go AWOL so we could see what was what. Frequently, I would go off with another guy. And coming back, in the dark, it would be dark, I would tell him, I'm going to sing a song. Don't be afraid, because I think that's where our guys are. And I want them to know we're coming in so they don't shoot us.
Right.
And so it worked. The time it worked greatly was we were, I don't know where we were, but they needed to bring somebody up from another company to our place. So I was sent down to this other company, some way down, middle of the night, dark, and I don't know how far, maybe, it would be maybe a football field at the most. And going down, there was a creek there, across the creek, and I made contact. Where the guys you want to send up, there were three, followed me, went back. I came to the creek, and the guy said, we're not going to cross here. Why not? It's not good, okay? Went up another place. Not going to cross here. I said, the next time I tell you we're going to cross, I'm going to go. And I'm going to leave you, so you better come with me. And we came to that place, and I went across, and they called me, and they came. And I said, we're close to my guys. I'm going to start singing, and I'm going to run in. And you better start, you run in with me. Don't. I started to sing. And very sharp, okay, Medow, over here.
Oh, God. How about that?
The guy said, you know, it's a good thing you started singing then, because here we are with a BAR.
Sure.
And we're ready to let it fly.
Sure.
Another minute, you'd have had it.
Right.
We had you in our sights.
Just imagine.
It's that kind of, those are the kind of situations.
Oh, yeah. Now, did you carry a BAR? Did you have a Browning automatic rifle?
No, all I carried was they gave me, I had picked up a Schmeisser, which is a 9mm automatic.
Nice
I
gun.
was afraid of it. One thing, if I were to be captured, I didn't want to have that on me when I was captured. Another thing, I was afraid to touch anything in the field for fear it was booby trapped.
Right.
And so I kept that with me for a while, and then I got rid of it. But coming back to, after we turned our prisoners over to our command post, I got crept into a corner and went to sleep. And somebody was fooling around with my legs. So I got up, awakened, said, "What's wrong?" He said, "We're sending you to the hospital." I said, "What's wrong?" "Your feet." "What's wrong with my feet?" "You're going to the hospital." And so I was put on a litter on a Jeep that had two beds for a Jeep. Too
Yeah.
long? Time
We're
out?
okay, we're fine, we're fine.
So they put me on there, and we're bouncing down the road, and I'm curious, I want to see what we're going through.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just at that moment, there's a train, there's a track, there's a trestle, and we were just dipping down, and there wasn't. I just threw my head back immediately, and the thing just skidded over my. That was the closest I came to dying.
Wow.
In that war.
Wow. Oh,
And then after that, I was in the hospital.
that was fun. Well, then, so to wind things up here, Martin, because we are getting to the end of the line here, but you came back, you were in Europe at the time of VE Day,
Yeah.
June of 1945.
We were in Chicago at VE Day.
Oh, you were?
May something.
Okay.
I had been through the hospitals. I was out of Grass Valley, California.
Oh, Grass Valley, California, they sent you clear out there.
Crazy. My home was in Chicago.
Well, I know.
And
For heaven's sakes, clear across the country. Well, that's just amazing, and you are a true survivor. I just congratulate you on that. What was your rank when you finally got out?
what was my in private? They told me that I could be a first class. I would be get a first class private if I stayed in another month. And I said, "Thank you very much."
You don't need that at all. Well, that's just wonderful. Great stories, and we're so thankful to you that you've come in, and now you're on record, and you'll be in the archives. You'll be in the archives.
What you do to me?
I know. Well, we're privileged to have had the opportunity, Martin, to talk with you, and we wish you well and a long life. And you've had one already, I know, but there's plenty of time yet. So God bless you and your wonderful wife Miriam and your family. Where do you live here in Cincinnati?
We live in Finneytown.
Finneytown.
You know where the high school is, Finneytown High School?
Yeah, sure.
We live on Fontainebleau, which is just
I live.
street a bit.
Yeah, I live in Hyde Park.
Okay.
And but I know Finneytown, sure. It's a wonderful, wonderful neighborhood.
GE, I work for GE, and GE's new president forked over and rebuilt our athletic field.
Oh, yes.
And everything else.
All right.
Beautiful place.
Yes, yes. Well, I was sad to see that Brian, what's his name, the president of GE died just about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, we did?
Yes. Yeah, he was ill and in the East. Brian, I can't remember his last name now. Anyway, he died. He was an English-born man, and he led GE here for many years. Well, listen, Martin Medow, God bless you. It's just wonderful to have had the opportunity to talk with you. And I know you could tell us many, many more things if we had more time. But now you know that you'll get a DVD of this interview for your family and you. and this wonderful public library of ours here in Cincinnati, which does such a great job for the veterans.